You're listening to How to 20 Something, the best podcast that helps both men and women navigate their 20s and learn how to adult across all aspects of their lives. We're going to focus on career, relationships, finances, fitness, nutrition, and all of the common challenges and obstacles a typical 20-something will face in this post-college life. I'm your host, Jess Diamond, and I am the CEO and founder of Jess Diamond Coaching, where I help young professionals get their shit together, gain their confidence, and own their life. No one prepares you for this adulting world, so allow me to help you feel like you are no longer a chicken running around with its head cut off, and that you actually know what the hell is going on and what your next step to take is. Welcome to How to 20 Something. Welcome back to How to 20 Something, with today's episode being all about you and your parents. But more specifically, how to share information with your parents so they actually listen to what you're saying, instead of shutting down, passing judgment, or misunderstanding you entirely. Basically, this is an episode all on communication and control, which are actually two of the pillars rooted in my Own Your Life system that I take my clients through when they step into a coaching partnership with me. And part of that communication is via different modes of technology. But the other part is, how do you speak up for yourself so you're heard? At work, with friends, with your romantic partner, and yes, with your parents too. Control, I'll touch on that a bit later. This episode topic was actually the first workshop I ever did for the parents of 20-somethings, but it was the other way around, with how to talk to your 20-something so they actually listen to you. So let's throw down an Uno reverse card and bam, now I have a full episode for you on how you can talk to your parents and basically do what's within your control to not let that conversation go sideways. Now, you might be a great communicator, and I believe you when you say that. But something happens psychologically where you become the worst communicator when it comes specifically to your parents. You see, adulthood opens this new door to an interesting dynamic between you and your parents where you're discovering yourself, willing to take risks, eager to take risks, questioning the status quo, doing things differently than how you were raised. Your parents only know how to parent the you that was a minor for 18 years. And until you turn 36, 18 years was a majority of your life. So when you talk to them, they still see this younger version of you where their instinct is to protect or fix and not listen and hear you out. In your eyes, you're becoming close to their equal in terms of respect warranted, independence granted, and even stage of life. In their eyes, you are not their equal. Even if you are fully living on your own and independent and doing this whole adulting thing, you're always going to be their baby. This is a major reason as to why your parents don't hear you when you're speaking. Because now that you're in your 20s, you've entered this new dynamic that I just described. So not only do your parents see you as your 16-year-old self and regress in their parenting styles, but you also regress to that version when you're with them. It's a chicken or the egg scenario. Are you acting immature, or are they treating you like a child? It's both. But which one is feeding the other? So the first reason why your parents don't hear you when you're trying to tell them something, and I'll get into examples in a second, but it's because they look at you and they see their baby. The second reason is you act like their baby and psychologically step backwards in time. So it's hard to demand to be treated like an adult when you probably aren't acting like one around them. And the third reason that I haven't mentioned yet comes from the side of timing. I feel like for some reason, these bigger conversations happen at the worst possible time, where someone's emotional or they're being completely blindsided, and the result is nobody wins, aka a sideways conversation. You want to be in a place where you can do everything within your power to make sure this conversation is prepped, with telling your parents you would like to update them on something or tell them about something that's come up. Be courteous of their capacity and schedules so you know they're in a place to receive whatever news it is you're about to give. And this should absolutely not be over a quick phone call, unless, of course, it's an emergency that you're needing help with. And this also shouldn't be at a restaurant or in the car. You need to give your parents and yourself the option to be able to walk away if things do indeed go sideways. Some examples that I see amongst my clients and even myself is making a big career decision and giving no context, no plan, and then expecting their full support. Now, I will say that some of my clients have their parents' full support through and through. They could say, Mom, Dad, I'm dropping out of school and joining the circus where I will identify as an elephant and do tricks. And their parents will be like, okay, as long as it makes you happy, I'm happy. That is the exception to the rule. Because most parents would respond with, are you out of your fucking mind? Obviously, that is an extreme example and not actually happening with any of my clients. But I will say when I called my mom after being unemployed for 5 months and she was paying my rent and told her that I was never going to return to corporate and instead I was going to join this outdoor fitness franchise and build my own little business within it, she obviously and rightfully had some pushback. In hindsight, for myself, I gave her no heads up, no context, and no plan as to how I was going to make a substantial living doing this career path. So she shut it down and told me, Jess, I think it's time for you to get a real job again. She crushed me. But I didn't do my due diligence by coming up with a here's how it's going to be possible game plan. Because she didn't support my dream until I had a dream that was full and was actively taking steps towards making it happen. Not with that fitness franchise anymore, but with personal training as the main part of my career. She's actually the person who told me to look into getting a coaching certification. So yes, it all ended up okay. And I will say they usually do. But we didn't talk to one another for about a month until I had a quote unquote real job lined up because of how crushed I was by her response to my news. More recently, I helped my client avoid this kind of reaction from his parents when he called me saying he's been sitting on some bad news for a few days and didn't know how to break it to his parents, which is how this episode came into fruition, in case you couldn't guess. His bad news was not bad news, bad news. It was a new freelance opportunity that said they didn't need him for the summer. So this income he was excited about and planning to receive was now disappearing. We talked about what else he could do, and we were already creating a Rover account for him to make flexible money dog walking. Last summer, he had some one-off side work that he could inquire about again, and he was being given more work with his current freelance position. So while he was on the phone with me, he reached out to his old contact. And then our conversation switched to, oh shit, what are you going to do? To a plan that he could present to his parents. As more of a, hey, I'm keeping you in the loop. This is what happened, and this is what I'm doing about it. Now the conversation becomes less scary because you're removing any potential objection, setback, judgment, or dismissal from your parents. You switch from seeking their approval to keeping them in the know of your life. If it's a money problem, for example, you need to decide for yourself if you need your parents to bail you out or help you out, or do you just want them to know what's happening and then hope and pray they offer to lend you a helping hand? Honestly, most of the examples I'm giving require context and a plan. Something important to note is the power of a plan, because it will turn any confession of I did this or this is happening or oh shit, I fucked up into a conversation. I'm going to say that again. Having a plan will turn a confession into a conversation. I want to run through some other examples just in case the one about me or my client didn't resonate as much. And so you have additional pieces of evidence as to where you're probably going wrong in your conversations and how fixing things on your end and your delivery is totally doable. So those examples are quitting your job with nothing lined up and no updates as to what you're going to do instead, saying you can't afford rent and not having any plan as to how you're going to fix this going forward, That's not going to work well for you. Deciding to move across the country with no thought of their concerns, like how you're going to move your belongings, when you'll come home to visit, what research have you done, what's the reasoning behind this decision, and so on and so forth. When you drop bombs on your parents, you're putting a lot of emotional labor on them to figure out how to feel, what to do, and to know that you haven't just totally lost your marbles, because that's kind of what it's looking like right now. Instead, if you need help with, say, rent, do you intend to pay your parents back? Or can you explain how hard you're working on saving money, but life is really fucking expensive and you're doing the best you can and you're budgeting everything you're spending and all the ducks are in a row, but you're still not coming out on top? That's the difference. And then taking a step back and look at things from their perspective, where if you're constantly asking them for money help, but then not pouring into your relationship with them, they're going to feel like your ATM and not a person. Your ATM, not your MOM. Sorry, I just had to say that. But what I just said was actually a real life example from a client I was working with a few months ago. We were tackling his finances and the habits behind his spending decisions, but he began working with me when he was already pretty deep in a hole and was constantly asking his mom to help him out. He then would never just go and spend time with her or do something nice for her or treat her like something more than an ATM. His mom told me verbatim that that was how she felt. So when I introduced the idea of pouring into his relationship with his mom a little more, he took that as a transactional exchange where he'll plan to hang out with his mom, sure, so that she could do XYZ for him. And I was like, no. It's treating your mom like a person without expecting anything in return. The reason the conversation goes sideways a lot of the time isn't just how you deliver the news. It's the relationship you've been building leading up to delivering the news. This client was only delivering news and not building up the relationship, so the news hit harder every time, and the result was far worse. So let's break down all the things I've said so far, because I've said a couple of different things. When it comes to talking to your parents, you need to decipher for yourself if you're asking for help, advice, to be heard and understood, or if you're just trying to keep them in the loop, and name whatever it is you're looking for from them. You need to provide context, which is background information as to what is going on. You need a plan for what you're devising up to help your problem or update to which your parents can help you build on or look into the feasibility behind it or just get more on board. And you need to treat your parents like real people, not ATMs, not at your beck and call. Not you, Mom. As you're listening to this, you're at my beck and call. Not as your personal assistant or as your therapist. Nurture them like how you nurture your friendships. For example, call them once a week just to say hi and talk about your life, not just when you need something. Now you're building a relationship with them, and less bombs will be dropped as a result because they're in the know and are seeing things unfold in real time. So, now that we've got your side of the conversation in check, let's switch over to the hardest part of telling your parents something and wanting to be heard. Their reaction. Dun, dun, dun. Because let's be honest for a sec. Most of you aren't worried about their emotional reaction. You're worried about the disappointment or losing their approval or the backlash that could come with keeping them in the know. Unfortunately, anticipating how they react is out of your control. What's in your control is how you set up the conversation and what to do if they try to interrupt, redirect, or make it about themselves. Because this very well could happen, and it's not out of malice. It's because you're giving them new information that they are having to process in real time, and that's their way of trying to process. I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's healthy. This is just their strategy. We're focusing on you. So you can do a simple reset when this happens and say that you know what you're saying might feel out of the blue and you want to give them time and space to sit with this new information, but you would like to finish your thought first and can answer any questions they may have afterwards. If you find the conversation totally derailing, then know that it's okay to pause this conversation and revisit it in a day or two when all parties feel ready to discuss. At the end of the day, you want to feel heard, if not supported emotionally, sometimes financially, by your parents for the decisions you're making or the events unfolding in your life in real time. Actually, being heard isn't about finding the magic words or the perfect way to deliver them. It all goes back to how I began this episode and trying your damned hardest not to regress to your teenage self. It's about showing up to the conversation like the adult you already are, which means you're coming with intention, a clear head, and realistic expectations. Because if you go into it already emotionally charged, you're setting yourself up for a disaster. My client, who sat on some bad news for a few days, did it perfectly. He waited one day before reaching out to me, but we couldn't get our schedules in sync for an additional day. We strategized together how to approach this with his parents, and then he talked to them when he was no longer down in the dumps from receiving this unexpected news, but rather confident in what he was going to do about it. That is how you talk to your parents so they actually listen to you. The goal is to be heard, not agreed with. You didn't fail this conversation because your parents didn't agree with what you've told them or the actions you're planning on taking. You only failed when you didn't do everything in your control to put your best, most adult self forward when it comes to actually having this conversation. Present the facts, give context, and tell them what the heck you're planning on doing to get yourself out of this pickle. You got this. It might take a few times, but as long as you don't give up, your parents will hear you when you speak to them. Or at least you know you did everything you could to get them to listen to you. And that, my friend, is how I'm going to wrap up this episode of How to 20-something. So thank you for listening to me yap, and hopefully your next yap with your parents is a much more successful one. So you know the drill. If you liked what you heard, learned something new, or know a friend who vents about their parents, then please share this episode. Post it to your story, send it to your friend, give me a 5-star rating. Just please help me find all of the 20-somethings out there trying to navigate the most confusing decade of their life. And as always, I can't wait to be in your headphones again next week, with another brand new episode.